In this video, I want to have a look at the stretch tool because that also can be a little complex if you're not paying attention. So I have 3 equal-sized solids here. I want to stretch just the center one in the view. I have my 4 standard views open, and I could stretch the center one quite easily in the isometric view simply by going to my stretch tool and placing my fence around and stretching. You'll notice though that when I do use the stretch tool, let me do it again, the only fence I have is a view sort of fence. So a view orientation fence, a plain square, which is fine for this object, but in a congested view, this can be quite difficult to use. So quite often you're going to use one of the orthogonal views to actually do the stretch. So let me undo that stretch, and let's take a look at the right side view, which is the most obvious place. I could do it here in the front view, of course, quite easily, but I want to show you what happens if I try to do it in the right side view. And drag upwards, and watch what happens on the isometric view. All 3 solids stretch at the same time. Now this makes sense. If my display depth is set incorrectly, and I want to set the display depth for the right view, so let's click in the right view, and we'll look at the front view. And we see that our display depth is that wide. So clearly, everything in the display depth will be stretched. Let's change the display depth. This will be my front clipping plane because I'm looking in the front view. So for the right side view, I'm looking in this direction. So let's pop the front there and the back clipping plane there. Now let's try this stretch again. Undo it. Stretch tool is still running. Put my fence in, stretch upwards, and this time only the center block is stretched, as we can see. And that's because these 2 blocks are not within the display depth, so they aren't stretched. Now this is a very important point. Essentially, only elements within the display depth are acted upon by most of the tools. Now one further setting to look at. In the right side view right now, if I look at view attributes, we'll see that clip back and clip front are on. And these are the clipping planes for the display depth. So what happens if I turn off the clip front and the clip back? What happens to my stretch? Let's find out. Let's undo that again. Stretch tool still running. Stretch upwards. And all 3 stretch, even though my display depth is between here and here. So with the clipping planes off, the display depth essentially disappears, and the entire volume of the drawing is now available to the stretch tool, which can be quite dangerous, particularly if you have elements spread fairly wide apart in a drawing. The tool you're working with may affect elements that you don't want it to affect. So you do need some precise control sometimes in a situation like this. So please practice both parts of that. Try it yourself with the clipping planes on and with the clipping planes off. And it's good practice in setting view depths and working with the whole concept of what's actually visible to a tool in the drawing, depending on the settings. It would also be helpful to turn the clipping planes back on again, even though it does make life easier not to have them on. Then you're not plagued with views which don't quite work. But I want you to appreciate how the clipping planes affect all 3D drawings.